What's going on, everyone? So the San Antonio Spurs are absolutely abysmal this year. Now, they do have Victor Wembanyama, who has shown that he is definitely going to be a generational type guy. They are currently 4-23 on the season. They are right back to a losing streak after beating the Lakers and ending that, 18-game losing streak. Now they're going for a new streak. And look, I understand that part of the goal is to just develop Victor, develop some of the young guys, right? They're not really concerned with wins and losses right now. They would probably rather, if you hooked them up to a lie detector test, would probably tell you we'd rather lose as many games as possible. Now, you're not going to out-tank the Detroit Pistons right now. They might set the record, which is crazy because they're a team that's actively trying to win, where the Spurs don't really seem to care, right? Spurs, if they could get the number one pick again this year, then that's just great. Gives more young talent. Maybe get another guy pair alongside Victor Wembanyama. But Victor has been fantastic this year. He's had his hiccups, don't get me wrong. He's had his good games, he's had his bad games. But, that roller coaster ride is what you expect from a young, just wet behind the ears type rookie. Defensively, he's already one of the best defensive players in the league. So worst case scenario, Victor Wembanyama is going to be the best defensive guy in the league. I could see him in the next 3 to 5 years being the best player in the league. But here's my frustrations with the San Antonio Spurs, and it's actually very surprising given the Spurs are coached by Greg Popovich, but the San Antonio Spurs have this habit of just doing everything they can to not get Victor Wembanyama the basketball. And I've talked about this kind of in passing in videos and stuff, but it's infuriating at this point, right? That there is not a active effort to go get your best player and future of the franchise in Victor Wembanyama. If the San Antonio Spurs tomorrow had to fire everybody but one player, that one player is Victor Wembanyama, is the one guy that they're keeping, right? And yes, again, I get it. You want to get all these guys somewhat developed. You want to get all these guys aboard. But your number one importance is Victor Wembanyama. Your number one importance is getting him established, getting him as much developed, getting him as much of just through the lumps as possible. There's no reason anyone else should be shooting more shots than Victor Wembanyama. I would rather Victor Wembanyama take every shot in every Spurs game than anybody else. If the alternative is everyone else takes more shots than Victor Wembanyama, or Victor Wembanyama takes all the shots, I would rather Victor take all the shots. Right? Let him get through his woes. Let him get through his hiccups. Let him, develop, get his reps in, all that stuff. But, you have guys, nobody actively tries to get Victor the ball with regularity. No one is looking to get Victor Wembanyama. How many times in the game does Victor get established and have position, or have a smaller guy on him, or have a mismatch, or whatever, and nobody gets him the basketball? Everyone just goes the completely opposite way of him. And I understand they don't have anybody that's a real playmaker, right? And that's something that they definitely need to address, is get somebody that can actually set everybody up. And I'm not saying that they don't have talented players. And I am being a little, over dramatic when I say I'd rather Victor Wembanyama shoot every shot. I do like Keldon Johnson. I do like Sohan. I do like, Vassell. I do like some of these guys. But again, there's no reason these guys should be taking 25 shots a game and Victor's getting 10. It's not. Keldon Johnson, Vassell, these guys are not the franchise guy. They're not running mates with Victor Wembanyama. More likely than not, they're probably going to have to trade one of Johnson or Vassell. They're going to have to. I don't think either of those guys are your second best player on a championship team. I don't see either of those guys as like, okay, that's the guy that we want to build around Victor. None of these guys, if I'm being honest, look like that. Zohan has like his good games and his bad games. And at times he looks like, oh man, he could be a very quality like piece on this team. And then other times he just looks like he doesn't even belong in the NBA. I think he has potential to be a very serviceable player. I think he could be very solid. But there are moments in games where like he is taking more shot attempts and doing more than Victor Wembanyama, who Zohan might not even be on this team in a couple years. It's frustrating. And it's crazy given that like you have Greg Popovich as your head coach, who's very about moving the basketball, free-flowing offense, right? But the Spurs are very ISO heavy. And look, part of it might just be, hey, we're trying to tank this year, and the best way to tank is to just let these guys just shoot us out of games and let these guys take horrible shots and all that stuff. I just don't like, and I just feel like you're doing more damage than good for Victor. Again, your priority over landing the number one pick in next year's draft, over developing anybody else, over winning or losing games, your number one priority should be getting Victor Wembanyama as much development and as much just opportunity as possible. And I think the Spurs have done a terrible job of that this year. I do. I just don't think that they have done Victor Wembanyama justice as far as like fully developing him. And I can understand and I can see, okay, well, it's his first year. This is the year. Just kind of let him go out there and just kind of feel for the game and, just get out his woes, right? I get that. But I still think you need to have some structure, some establishment of like, okay, this is your team. You're the guy. There are very few times where it feels like Victor Wembanyama is clearly the franchise guy for this team. Because usually when you have a franchise guy, usually when you have a best player, what do? You get him the basketball. Dallas, who has the ball in their hand? Luka. Milwaukee, who has Giannis? Philly, Embiid. Denver, Jokic. The Lakers, LeBron or AD, right? Like, you look at these teams that have like the guy, clear-cut number one guy. They're the ones that usually get the most shot attempts. Now, obviously, if a guy is hot, right? If Johnson's shooting the lights out, right? What was the game? Like, the Laker game in which the Spurs won. I didn't mind that. Victor was having a bad game, like by his standards. I mean, he still had a good game, like stat-wise, but like he if you watch that game, he was having his struggles. He wasn't being the guy that they needed him to be. But like Vassell was just like, he was hot and he was torching the Lakers. Right? In a game like that, feed the hot hand. I'm totally okay with them doing that. Right? Especially if it leads to winning. But outside of 4 games, it hasn't. And even like the 2 Spurs game or the 2 Suns games that you won, Victor won those for you. Victor actively outplayed Kevin Durant and won those for you. So almost all of your wins have came because Victor Wembanyama was the best player in those games. The other wins were just, again, Lakers decided not to play Anthony Davis, which as soon as that became a reason, or he sat out, it was like, okay, they're not going to win this game. And secondly, you gave the Spurs all this hope and belief the game prior, right? And thirdly, right, Vassell was just shooting the Spurs just were red hot, right? But all the other games, Victor was the best guy on the court. Victor is your best player. And again, it just kind of feels like San Antonio is doing it deliberately and allowing it to happen deliberately just to tank. But I do feel like you're not doing Victor justice, and that should be your number one priority. Now, also, maybe some of it is like, okay, let's showcase some of these guys because we're probably shipping most of them out, right? Because now that we have Victor, we're probably going to make a trade at some point. Because again, I just don't think anybody else is like the clear number 2 guy. Like, I think if Johnson or Vessel are like your 3rd guy, cool, right? If that's like if they're your 3rd guy and they're just basically your vacuum scorer, fine, I'm okay with it. Or like even like your 6th man, right? I'm okay with it. But as far as like, okay, Victor is the best player, who's our 2nd best player? I don't think anybody on the Spurs is that guy. I just think they're like Johnson and Vassell are just too much tunnel vision. They can shoot you out of a game too much, right? Like you don't want them being the guy, right? Like I feel like the Spurs are doing more harm than good with Victor. I just think he's so good. It's not going to have that much of an impact. And look, I'm not saying like, they're ruining Victor's career or anything like that. But I lean towards this is a generational talent. This is the future of your franchise. This is the guy that can potentially build you a new dynasty. And you're allowing everyone else but the guy that should have the basketball. I would rather Victor shoot every shot than anybody else. Like if my only 2 options are Johnson and Vassell shooting us out of shooting us out of games every game and getting Victor Wembanyama the basketball and letting him shoot 40 times a game, I'd rather let him shoot 40 times a game. All right, because at least he's getting his reps, at least he's getting his feet wet. He's going to have those games where he just is great and single-handedly wins you a game. That's the case. I'd rather go that direction. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Do you have your same frustrations? Do you not? Again, how do you feel? I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below.